Okay, I just start the recording and let me share my screen. Okay. So guys, welcome to Surat MuleSoft Meetup 48. And topic for today's meetup is like we will discuss about Anypoint API governance, and we will see some demonstration on like how we can apply the API governance on RAML, Open API specification, and Async API with the MuleSoft. And also we will going to discuss about CloudHub 2.0 capabilities. Okay. So let me start with a safe harbor statement. So both the speaker and host are organizing this meetup in the individual capacity. We are not representing our organization here. This presentation is completely for or strictly for learning purpose only. We are not holding any responsibility that same solution will work for your business requirement. This presentation is not meant for any promotional activities. Housekeeping. So recording of meetup you can find on the event page within the 24 hours. You can ask the question at any time. Try to make session as interactive as possible. At the end, like I request everyone to provide a true feedback, so which give us opportunity to improve in the future. The organizer for this particular meetup, Jitendra Bafna, myself, and Nitish Jain, and speaker will be again myself. Like I am a MuleSoft ambassador, like go-to-market champion, industry champion, and delivery champion. Having the 14 years of experience working as a senior solution architect at the EPM system, currently leading a 4 MuleSoft meetup group: Surat, Nasik engineering student, and the Mumbai meetup group. Okay, like agenda. So we have already have an introduction. Then we will discuss about CloudHub 2.0. What are the private space and the shared space in the CloudHub 2.0? We will talk about API governance. Then we will have some demonstration. Finally, we have a trivia quiz. Any question on agenda or anything? No. Okay, so let me start with Anypoint CloudHub 2.0. As you aware, like MuleSoft initially have introduced a CloudHub 1.0 where like you can deploy your application on EC2 instance basically, right? So basically when you try to deploy application on the worker, right? So what it does, it create a EC2 instance, AWS EC2 instance in the backend. It set up Mule runtime, JVM, and the top of that particular EC2 instance, it deploy your application. So for each application it create a new EC2 instance basically, and each or like in each EC2 instance only one application runs. So in case of when you are deploying a application on two workers, it will create two EC2 instance, or like two instance of application will be deployed on the two separate, right? So let's see what happens in the cloud of 2.0. So as you aware, last month MuleSoft has announced CloudHub 2.0 to simplify the developer experience for deploying and the running application in the containerized environment, which is based on the Kubernetes. So now what MuleSoft has done, so you can deploy your application in the containerized environment, which is Kubernetes based. So CloudHub 2.0 is also fully managed like CloudHub 1.0. It's a containerized service for deploying your application and running your MuleSoft application. So with CloudHub 2.0, you can quickly deploy a application. You can quickly run the application in resilient and the easily scalable environment. So with CloudHub 2.0, like you can in CloudHub 1.0, we call workers, right? Workers like deploy application on one worker, deploy application on two worker, and you can use like we like worker size, right? In CloudHub 2.0 we call that as a replicas. So deploy application on one replicas. If you want the application high availability, deploy the application on the multiple replicas, that is the two replica, three replica, maybe four replica. So those kind of things. So in CloudHub 1.0 we call that as a worker. In CloudHub 1 2.0 we call that as a replicas. Okay, so what are the features of CloudHub 2.0? So you can deploy the application in the private and the shared space. So shared space is nothing like it's a like you have a shared out of 1.0, right? We like, similarly we have a shared space, so that space will be shared by the multiple clients of the MuleSoft basically, right? So you have a, like that particular like multiple client can deploy the application within the same shared space within the same space, right? So you are deploying application in the multi-tenant mode where like each and every customer of the MuleSoft can deploy that application in that particular space, correct? With private space, like you can have it, you can have it your own space. Like in that particular space nobody can deploy the application, like you will only deploy your application. You have to define the IP range like CEID or mask, like what you are doing for Anypoint VPC, right? You have to do the similar thing for the private space. You have to provide a CIDR range, that is IP range. And once you done that, so you can create your private space, and then you can deploy your application into the private space. Let me clarify a few things. If you are deploying the application in the shared space, right, it doesn't mean your data will be shared with the other application, right? Your data will be shared with the other vendor or other tenant basically. It will not, it will be isolated, right? And in CloudHub 2.0 we are doing the isolation on the basis of containers, right? Whereas in the CloudHub 1.0 the isolation has been done uh, like on the basis of worker. So worker is nothing, it's a like dedicated instance, nothing like it's a EC2 instance basically. Can you hear me? If you don't hear me, just let me know.
Yeah, we are able to hear you, Jitendra.
Okay. So again, I mentioned with CloudHub 2.0, your application isolated is on the basis of container. CloudHub 2.0 also provide is available in 12 region globally. It's available in US, Europe, like some Asia Pacific regions also. It's same like all the same regions supported by CloudHub 1.0. Application can be deployed on the multiple replicas. Here we are calling as a replicas, and in CloudHub 1.0 we call that as a workers to enable the high availability and the fault tolerance. So what fault tolerance means? When you are deploying application will be deployed two different
Jitendra, you're breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
Now,
Yeah, now
yeah,
it's
My
clear.
voice clear?
now your
Oh,
voice is clear, but earlier we have a little bit, hiccup. Yeah.
okay. So again, what I mentioned, like you can deploy the application in the fault tolerance mode. So these are the like default features provided by the CloudHub 2.0. I think it's the same features available in the CloudHub 1.0. So when you are deploying an application on multiple replicas, it means your application will be deployed, within two data center or two availability zone. So if one of the availability zone goes down, you have an application in another availability zone that will take care of the request. So what does do? So whatever replica has been faulty, right, that replica will try to restart in other availability zone. So that is how it's happened. CloudHub 2.0 provide more granular options, vCores option. With CloudHub 1.0 you have a 0.1, 0.2, then we have a 1 vCore, 2 vCore, 4 vCore, 8 vCores, and 16 vCore. With CloudHub 2.0 you have a 0.1 vCore, 0.2 vCore, then you have a 0.5 vcore, 1 vcore, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, and 4 vcores. So you can allocate maximum 4 vcores to one replica, right? If you want 8 vcores, so you want to have a two replicas with each 4 and 4 vcores. Application, it also support Anypoint clustering. Basically you can deploy the application in the cluster mode, so you require minimum two replicas for that if you want to enable the clustering. That's true, right? It support for the rolling update and the recreate while deploying the application. So you can select deployment model as a rolling update or recreate. So rolling update you can you can deploy the application with zero downtime, like your application will never goes down. So till the new instance is coming up, your old instance will keep running. Once your new instance is up, then old instance will be replaced by the new one basically. On recreate, first it delete the application, it will delete that particular instance and try to create the new instance. We will going to see in the demonstration. You can easily achieve the horizontal scaling by increasing the number of replica, and you can easily achieve the vertical scaling by increasing the vCore size. It supports the features like intelligent healing, zero downtime update, and CloudHub 2.0 stores up to 200 MB of log data, whereas in CloudHub 1.0 it stores 100 MB of data. Here 200 and up to 30 days. It's the same in CloudHub 1.0. It's up to 30 days, right? So what are intelligent healing means? So in case of intelligent healing, like if your replicas or your instance of application is gone down or it got crashed, it will automatically try to recover, like it will try to reinitiate, it will try to automatically restart. So those kind of features is provided by CloudHub 2.0. Any question? Here, right, Rohit, like it's a container base. We don't have a concept of VMs here, basically, right? So here we don't have a concept of virtual machine. It's a container. It's a Kubernetes based architecture, right? So you may have a one Kubernetes cluster. In that cluster, your multiple tenant can deploy the application, but they are isolated with each other. Okay, so we don't have a VM EC2 instance here, right? But in the cloud of 1.0, so there will be one EC2 instance for one application, right? There will be second EC2 instance for second application, like that. It even doesn't matter, like it's coming from which tenant. So there will be different virtual machine for each and every instance in cloud of 1.0. In cloud of 2.0, we have a concept of Kubernetes, where like it's a Kubernetes cluster. In within that cluster, multiple tenant can deploy the application. Or so I will say, within that particular IP range, the multiple tenant can deploy the application. Within that subnet, you can call this as a within that space, the multiple tenant can deploy the application. Is this answer your question, Rohit? It's no, it's only I am never mentioned like it's not backed by the, they are using AWS infrastructure only. See, on AWS we don't have a EC2 instance also. We have everything like Madhuri. We have everything like what about object? It support object stores and everything. Like it supports, like we have a clustering, right? So you can definitely like have a, like you can deploy the multiple instance of application. You enable the clustering, and the data will share across the application. We have everything supported, like, but I never mentioned like it doesn't runs on the AWS infrastructure, right? It's AWS infrastructure only. So this is the architecture. So basically, like either you can have a shared space when you are deploying your application or shared space. The MuleSoft provide the CloudHub.io domain, and then you are like, my application, it automatically generates some GUID with your application, basically with this URL, right? So the customer can send the request to the CloudHub.io. So the request will go to the shared space, and it can access the application which is running on the shared space. Let consider my application running on the private space. In such case, you require the ingress load balancer. So you can set up the ingress load balancer within your private space, and the customer can send the request to that ingress load balancer. From ingress load balancer, the request will route to the MuleSoft application. Here we don't have a dedicated load balancer. So we have something like Kubernetes support the ingress load balancer, basically, right? So we have a ingress load balancer here. So shared load balancer, it doesn't support any vanity domain. You have to use the MuleSoft provided domain. It doesn't support custom certificate. It is a multi-tenant space. Last mile security and SSL forwarding supported. We will see these options. With private space, it support custom certificate. Like you can have your own domain, vanity domain, like like api.example.com or something like. It's similar to Anypoint virtual VPC and dedicated load balancer. Here, it only support transit gateway and virtual private network. It doesn't support VPC peering, and it doesn't support AWS Direct Connect. Okay, so these are the options. So we have already discussed all these features like application isolation, fully managed, intelligent healing, zero downtime update. In yeah, here it also support, you can configure inbound as well as the outbound firewall rule. So you can mention like what kind of ingress traffic is allowed, and what kind of egress traffic is allowed. It's available in 12 region, which I mentioned. Mutual authentication is supported. It's container based deploy. You can do the certificate management. It support the MuleSoft clustering. It support last mile security. So last mile security means you are getting the request on HTTPS, you are forwarding the request on HTTPS to the application. Dynamic scalability, high availability, more granular vCore options, and its fault tolerance. I mentioned it automatically try to recover in case if any instance goes down. Okay, so these are the few features provided by cloud. So let me discuss more about cloud of shared space. So as I mentioned, shared space enable you to run the MuleSoft instance in the multi-tenant mode, and cloud of 2.0 provide one shared space in each region to deploy a MuleSoft application. As I mentioned, this particular it only provide one shared space which will be shared by the multiple tenant, which doesn't mean your data will be shared across the tenant. It will be the like it will be secure. Okay, when to use the shared space? So basically, if you don't have a requirement of custom domain, right, and you can continue to use CloudHub.io, which is provided by MuleSoft, in that case, you can use the shared space. You don't have a requirement of custom certificate, and you don't want to connect your on-premise data center or private data center, or or any private cloud, right? In that case, you can use the shared space. Like you may have to connect only public URLs, right? You don't have to connect any private resources which are located in your on-premise, or it can be located in your any private cloud. In such cases, you can go with the shared space. You don't have a requirement of running the application isolation from the public cloud. Like if you don't want to run your application in multi-tenant mode, if you want to run your application in your own space, in such cases you can go with you cannot go with a shared space. When not to use the shared space? So as you mentioned, if you want to run your application in single tenant mode, you cannot use the shared space. If you have a requirement of custom domain, if you have a requirement of custom certificate, if you need a private endpoint, so by default, the endpoint provided by shared space, it's a public endpoint. If you need a private endpoint, you can use the you cannot use the shared space. And the most important thing, when you cannot use the shared space, whenever you want to connect any private data center or private cloud, or maybe some resources or databases located on your on premises. This is how the typical shared space architecture looks like. So client can send the request to the cloudhub.io URL. From cloudhub.io, the request will go to the application, and the application can connect to the any public URL basically. So this Salesforce cloud, marketing cloud, these are all available publicly, right? So we don't want to open any VPN connections or any VPC connections or any transit gateway connection. We can directly connect that. So by default, MuleSoft application deployed in the shared space, they have an internet connectivity to connect the application which is running outside the cloud or any point platform. And only the thing, those application must be available over the internet. Let's discuss about CloudHub 2.0. So CloudHub 2.0 is nothing. It's a virtual, private, and isolated space in the CloudHub to run or to host your MuleSoft application. So definitely you can create a multiple private space in the single or multiple regions in the CloudHub 2.0. So one of the mandatory requirement for creating the private space, we require the IP ranges, which we are doing for our Anypoint virtual private cloud also, or Anypoint virtual VPC in CloudHub 1.0. So when to use the private space? Whenever there is a need of custom domain, custom certificate, whenever there is a need of private endpoint, whenever you want to configure inbound as well as the outbound firewall rules, basically, in that case, you can go with the private space. The one of the important thing when to use the private space, when you want to connect the resources or services or databases located on your on-premise server or private cloud or in the corporate data center, right? You can use basically you can use the private space, because private space provide any point virtual private network or transit gateway. It doesn't support VPC peering, and it doesn't support the AWS direct connect as a cloud of 1.0. Any question on this? Let me check. There's a no dedicated certificate management is only for private space, so you cannot have a in case of. No, I think it's a part of your like application, so you can add that, like and then you can make sure, like whether you want it private or public. But you like if you are doing ingress, and in case like if you want any domain, right, then you have to do the entry in the DNS registry, Kishori. Artist, it's a like private space is nothing. It's kind of virtual private cloud only. Basically, it's a private space, right? Yeah. Sudhir, it's a simple, like it depend on like how many vCores you have, right? So basically, like definitely, like if you are using the shared space, you you will be allocated with some kind of vCore depending on what kind of license you are taking, right? So let's consider if I have a one vCore, right, and if I have like one vCore, and if I'm deploying the application on point one vCore, so I can deploy up to 10 application. It means, right? It's simple, like yeah.
Jitendra, can you please elaborate on that point, ingress DLB?
See, ingress, like in Kubernetes, like there's a concept of, yeah, like in Kubernetes, what like whenever in Kubernetes we use the ingress load balancer, right? We like anybody want to enter. to your environment, to your network, or anybody want to access the application, it has to be via ingress load balancer, right? So basically ingress, when you deploy your application, it will give a ingress URL, right? So it will give a ingress URL, and then you can make that ingress URL as a private and public. And if you want some, like as I mentioned, like if you want some domain name, basically like some like custom domain name like api.example.com, so you should have a certificate with api.example.com. Those certificates needs to be configured in the CloudHub 2.0. And also you have to ensure that, like that the api.example.com have a DNS, public DNS registry, so the people can access that.
Okay.
It's a similar to dedicated load balancer also, right? In dedicated load balancer, we got some kind of domain name, right? Some domain name or C name, we call that a C name. Then we do the, like if you want to do the if you want to support the custom domain, then we do the entry in DNS registry, like api.example.com can be mapped with some dedicated load balancer C name, like that.
So just to clarify this, right? In case of any point VPC, we add the certificates on DLB level, right? So in case of 2.0, is it the case that the certificate will be added on ingress load
Yeah.
balancer?
Yes, you have to add the certificate. When you create a private space, right? You can add the
Mhm.
certificate there on the private space. So let me show that. I don't have a private space, otherwise I would have shown you. So let me show if I can show. So here you can define your certificates. You can create a TLS context and everything. Like you can upload your files and everything, right? Then like you will not going to host like a separate application on the separate domain in the private space, right? You want to run all your application under the single host name, that is api.example.com, right? So you can define that into the private space. You can just upload the certificates, or your domain certificate and the respective private key, basically, right? So like if you have a api.example.com, so your private key or your like domain certificate, it should be with the api.example. Then you create a key TLX context. Then you can create a multiple TLS context, and whatever TLS context you want to attach, you can attach with the application, that you can do it.
Yeah, got it.
And here they have given this like login into domain register, like how you can do the domain registry, basically. So you can see it here. I would have shown demo because right now it's not working private space for me, basically. Okay. By default you can see like there's a something called 54.rtf.c, like by default, right? You can create your own. This is the default TLX context, right? And you can create your own, basically. Got it?
Yeah,
Or any, you have any doubt?
no, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, let me go forward. So this is how the private space architecture looks like. So you can have your own domain. So as I mentioned, you can define the TLX context in the private space, and you can just upload the related certificate for that particular domain. So basically client access can send a request to the ingress load balancer, and from ingress load balancer, like the request will route to the MuleSoft application, right? Which is running in the private mode. And those MuleSoft application can connect to the on-premise data center using VPN IPsec tunneling, that is Anypoint VPN, or it can connect to the resources in AWS VPC using transit gateway. Okay, in CloudHub 1.0 we can do the VPC peering for connecting two VPCs, right? But here we can make use of the transit gateway, because the advantage with the transit gateway, even like I can remove the VPN IPsec tunneling from here. In AWS I can set up, I can set up the connection between this particular VPC or this particular transit gateway and on-premise data center. So we don't have to maintain that connection from MuleSoft side. We can just create a transit gateway between a CloudHub and the AWS, and the AWS will do the proper routing to AWS VPC or corporate data center or on-premise data center. Those kind of things right now. Okay. So what are the features not supported? Anypoint data graph is not supported. VPC pairing direct connect is not supported. We don't have a concept of persistent VMQ. It doesn't support TLS 1.0. It doesn't support the CloudHub connector. It doesn't support the URL rewriting. So if you see in dedicated load balancer, it supports URL rewriting, right? The request coming on like dedicated load balancer, then dedicated load balancer transform that request to the internal URL of your application, then forward that. So those kind of things is not supported here in the CloudHub 2.0. Okay. So why CloudHub 2.0? So because it's a Kubernetes based architecture. So basically like it's a container based deployment. So it's a very lightweight. So you can deploy the application at a lightning speed basically. Like I will going to show in demonstration. So it takes like less than 1 minute or maybe less than 30 seconds for deploying your application, depending on your connection also. But with CloudHub 1.0, if you have noticed, it take a lot of time, right? Here like you don't have to use dedicated load balancer. You can make use of built-in ingress load balancer, and this ingress load balancer auto scale. Like you don't have to define any configuration for auto scaling and all those things. It automatically auto scale depending on the number of requests coming to the private space. You can define the inbound as well as the outbound rule. Okay, so you can allow like what kind of traffic is allowed and what type of traffic can go out. It provides inbuilt securities policy that secure the services and sensitive data with the encrypted secrets. Basically, you can make use of secret manager. I think here I haven't explored it, but like I'm waiting for to get that private space, then I can explore it. Okay, so let me go with demonstration part. So if you see, this is my. Let me change the environment to production. Any question, guys? Okay, there is a no question. If anybody wants to on the mic, I will try to do that. I'm trying to on the mic for everyone. Today my co-leader is not available. Okay, so let me start again. So I will go with the demonstration. Hope you are still seeing my screen, right?
Yep.
Yes, Melvin, you can choose. Like I'm just showing everything in demo. So basically, like I have two applications. So one with HTTP enabled and HTTPS enabled. So I forget to give one information. With CloudHub 2.0, it only support one port, which is 8081 for all kind of HTTP and HTTPS request. But in CloudHub 1.0, it support 8081 for HTTP, 8082 for HTTPS, 8091 for private HTTP, and 8092 for the private HTTPS. Here, everything is 8081. Okay. So I have two applications, one with the HTTP endpoint, one with the HTTPS endpoint. Okay. So what I have to do, I have login into my Anypoint platform, and I have an option to deploy the application. If you see, you will see the 12 shared region. Basically, these are the shared spaces, CloudHub 2.0 here options. Then you have a CloudHub also. Then you have a hybrid option. If you are using like if you have Mule runtime running in the customer hosted, right? So in that case, you can use the hybrid. But I will go with CloudHub 2.0, and I will try to deploy the application in OEO region, which is my favorite one. Then I can say order API HTTP load file order API HTTP. Here you can see the multiple options. Like it only support two version of Mule runtime, 4.3.0 and 4.4.0. It doesn't support any other version. So you can select the replica size. So there we call as a vCore size. Here we call as a replica size. So I will go with 0.1 vCore and replica. So if you see by default, this particular option is disabled, right? this particular. So if I select two replicas, it will give me options to enable. So I think somebody asked me like how object store those kind of things support. So for object, for supporting or for sharing the data across the multiple application, you can deploy the multiple instance and you just enable this particular and use the object store version 2. You can just say object store v2. Okay, just I will say one. Then deployment model, if you want to deploy the application with a zero downtime update, use the rolling update. In case if you don't want zero downtime, just use the rekey rate. So those are the settings, and by default it will give a ingress to you. And last mile security, I will show when you need to enable deploy application. Any question?
Yeah, Jitendra, like no, you selected one replica, right? So if you select the couple of replicas, and then the reason will be the same, or reason will be the change for each
No,
each.
no, the region will be same. If you
Okay.
know, in AWS each region have a multiple availability zone or multiple data
Yeah.
centers, right?
Yeah.
So here you can check the status. It doesn't take much of the time. So here you can see we got the URL, which is order API hyphen HTTP. It gives some like in CloudHub 2.0 you are see in CloudHub 1.0 your application name should be unique across the tenants, right? Here it's fine like if your application name is not unique, because MuleSoft append like some SARD ID or unique ID in the front of your URL. Basically, I will copy this. See, it's it deployment haven't took like more than 30 seconds. I will just say API/orders. I got a response. This is my URL, which is on HTTPS, and I got a successful response, right? Let me do one more deployment. I will say order API HTTPS. I will keep everything same. Okay. Just I will browse the HTTPS one application. HTTPS. Let me check if ingress is there. So it should give a ingress URL. So this is my ingress URL. I will copy this API/orders. Let me check if it's view status. It started at 11:35:00.
Hi Jitendra, why it is
Yeah.
showing like configuration applied
Configuration applied in the sense where
while deployment it is showing, right? See, decide configuration applied
yeah, that
successfully.
means the application has been deployed.
Okay, so it's a different timing they are using.
Yeah. So here now I'm trying to access this HTTPS application. It should fail 502 bad gateway or something like that. Yeah, 502. Why? Can anybody tell me the reason? Here I have a HTTPS listener for this particular application, right? So what does means the request will go on HTTPS and I have to forward a request on HTTPS. I forget to enable last mile security. If your application have a HTTPS listener, right? So you have to ensure that you have to enable the last mile security. Apply the changes. Okay. So I have to enable the last mile security. So it might be applying. It's applying.
So Jitendra, when you say HTTPS listener, right? It is having the certificates and everything there, or
Yeah, it will have, but when you deploy the application, right, it will use the cloud of dot. Yeah, it have a certificate. Like you have to set up the key store basically for that
Oh,
JKS or PKCS 12 format or G. There are three formats supported, right?
yeah.
Let me refresh. Yeah, I got the response now for HTTPS also, right? So it means like I want to show another example. What I will do. So now I have to explain your rolling update and that thing, right? So what I will do, just I will do some configuration changes, point to vcore, and I will try to apply the changes. I will just delete the, I will try to apply the changes. Let's see. Let me check whether my application on HTTP is up and running. Yeah, still it's up and running. If you see, it is applying the configuration point to vcore, but your application never gone down. It is not getting down, right? You are still getting the responses, right? So let's refresh it.
Yeah, it means that like if you modify anything, then no need restart the API, right?
What means?
No, when you apply the changes, okay, no need to restart the API,
So
right?
I'm not, see, I'm not doing any
Yeah,
restart
yeah.
here, right? I'm just applying the configuration.
It is a zero downtime. That's what, right?
Yeah. Here I'm not we don't have option to start or we can do it from here only, stop or delete, right? So, but here you can see I'm just apply the new configuration because here our rolling update is now application is done. Now let me do one thing. I will just change to point one again and try to do recreate. Just apply the changes. Let's wait. Still it's not applied. Here you can see. Yeah, your application gone down, right? Here in that earlier case your application is still up. Now refresh it. It thrown the error 502 bad gateway, right? So that's the difference between recreate. It will delete the instance and try to recreate. That's a big difference, right? Okay, so that's the difference between recreate and the rolling update. Any doubt on this?
Yeah, Jitendra. In what scenarios will we go for recreate deployment model instead of the rolling update?
Yeah.
In what kind of scenarios would we want to prefer the recreate deployment model
Uh,
usually?
Sometime like like you are deploy some faulty application, right? Sometime, and you want to ensure that if you are replacing that particular application, right, so you have to delete it, you have to create it basically. See, as such, like it depend on your requirement of business to business. Mostly like people will go with a rolling update only, like 99.99% of people, right? Nobody will, in case if you are deployed any faulty application, or if you feel like your application have some lot of errors, and if you want to like request to come in, if you want to stop that, right, on that particular application, so you can go with a recreate option.
Okay, thank you.
I already explained the deployment model sake. Yes, definitely, the you have to deploy all the replicas in the single region, but it will go across the multiple availability zone in that particular region. So as I mentioned, last mile security is nothing like you just receive the request on HTTPS and you forward the traffic on the HTTPS. Yeah, Asutosh, you are right. Okay. Yeah, this is just a status, right? So in Kubernetes, we call this like, it always will say like, say basically we are doing the configuration changes. Even you are deploying the application, we are updating the configuration. So it always say applying the configuration. It doesn't matter, right, Melvin? Like how does this statement matter, right? If you say deploying or applying, it's the same thing. Okay. Okay, so I'm completed with CloudHub 2.0 capability. Now I will go with the API governance part. So this will take another 15 to 20 minutes to complete that. So as you know, MuleSoft has recently introduced, not recently, like it's 2 3 months or 4 months back, API governance. So what is the API governance? With the API governance, you can ensure that your API specification, which is in OAS format, RAML or async API, must be consistent, compliance, and it's like across the organization or across the enterprise. So MuleSoft provides some set of default rule, like like top 10 OWASP security, Anypoint best practices, API best practices, like Open API best practices. Those kind of rules are available that you can apply to your Open API or RAML or Async API specification to ensure that your API is it's a quality quality API spec basically, right? So main purpose for API governance to get a consistent and your API spec must be compliance, and it has been designed with the best practices and the guidelines. So basically you don't have to maintain the documentation for your best practices, so generally what you does, you maintain the documentation, you are just verified everything with the documentation. So there can be a n number of documentation you are maintaining to just set up or to just maintain the guidelines related to your API best practice and design. So instead of that, like you can make use of this API governance feature where MuleSoft provides some default set of rule that you can apply on your APIs, on your existing and the new APIs. So these are the few rule set provided by MuleSoft: Anypoint best practices, authentication security best practices, HTTPS enforcement, Open API best practices, top 10 OAuth security best practices. There are some examples. Then there is, again, they have come up with one more, that is async API best practices. These are some set of rule, like you can get it, like you can click off one of the URL. Yeah, these are the some set of rules basically. Okay, so you can just check, resource use lowercase, like those kind of rules. Okay, so you can click on those link and you can read about the link. Right now it doesn't support the custom rules. Basically you cannot write your own rules right now. So once your API has been scanned, it will generate the report. Basically you have to create a API governance profile, and in that API governance profile you can filter like what kind of API needs to be scanned with this particular profile, and it will finally give a report like this, and also it will generate the email. What are the benefits of API governance? So you can enable developer to apply the governance rules at a design time. Basically, while designing your API, you can apply the rule. It will produce the consistent API spec across the organization. You will get like better quality API spec and better secure API spec. You can design your API with the best practices, and guidelines. It also ensure the design time conformance and design time governance also. It will reduce the top 10 OWASP securities. So you can read about the top 10 OWASP security, which is available over the internet. So let me go with some demonstration part. So basically I will go to design center. So I have three API: async API, book inventory is nothing, open API specification, open banking is nothing, like it's a RAML based API. Let me check. Yeah, so either you can apply the rule set from here, like you just click here, and whatever rule set you want to apply, you can apply from here, but I will just ignore for now. I'll publish this API to Anypoint Exchange. Okay, what is the error? Error not found. Okay, so let me publish it. I will just say 1.0.0, and I will just check Okay, so I will just say publish to exchange. Okay, let me do one thing. I have other API open. I think there's a problem with this particular API, so let me open. I can download this and let me go back to my design center. Create new. I will just import this particular API. I can say open banking API demo import. Okay, I will try to publish this. I can say 1.0.0 and say v1 publish to exchange. Okay, I have published this. Let me publish the other also, design center. Right, I will publish this async API also. Just waiting. I hope you can hear me. Okay, it's publishing. Let me check the exchange. Sometime it publish it. I have a connection. Yeah, it's published. Like, okay, so async API is also published. Then I have a third API which is open API specification. That is book inventory API. Publish. That's 0. Okay, so all three API has been published. Now let me go to Anypoint exchange. Okay, you can see my RAML API, and if you click on this particular API is not, it will say not validated yet. You can see the conformance scan is not validated. You will see the similar status for other two API also, because we haven't created any governance profile yet. So we have to go to API governance, new profile, and I will say RAML governance profile. Next, we select Anypoint best practices, authentication security. Okay, data graph best practices recently introduced, HTTPS, OAuth, and required example. Next, here it will list down all the APIs which can comes under this particular profile basically. So there is a 4 API. It's come under this because I'm not choosing any API type or any tags or any. We are not choosing any filters here, right? I will going to show this feature also. Let me go next. Next. Okay, and create. So once it will create a profile, you can create, it will create a governance profile, and it will list down all the API which it going to scan basically.
Hey Jitendra, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Jitendra, I have one question. So these governance profiles, so these are all pre-built.
Yeah, this is a pre-build, like it's a out of box rules.
Okay, okay. So we are just combining them to create one single profile so that we can match
Yeah,
all APIs, right? So that they
correct.
fall into standards. Okay.
Okay, so here like these are the two API, and let me go back to my exchange and let's see what is the status of my API now. This is my next. Let me check which is open banking API. It should say non-conformant, and why it's non-conformant, these are the things failed basically, right? We will going to see more in detail. Let's wait. And for book inventory API, it's again non-conformant, and what other things failed basically, right? So those kind of thing. But I want a separate profile my for book inventory, and separate profile for async API, and separate profile for everything, like so what I can do, I can add something called tags. So what I can say, RAML API, I will just say enter and go back. Then I can say book inventory API, it's my OS API, right? And then I can go back to my API governance. Okay, if you see in API governance, so I have these two API, you can see the report, complete report for your API. So what are the violations and everything, it will list down everything where it is failing for this book inventory API, and same thing it will like tell everything about your your open banking API also, those kind of thing you can see it here. But now this is for RAML, right? So I just want to govern RAML with this profile. So what I will do, I will edit this thing. Okay, and I want to update it. I will go to rule set. In rule set, sorry, filter criteria, I will go to tag. So I can say RAML. So any API with a RAML tag, API tag, you can just like now it's showing one API only, right? So I go to next review. I will say update profile. So now there will be one API under this basically, right? So let's wait. Like now there's only one API under this, right? Now what I have to do for the other, so I have to create a new profile. For creating new profile, I have to go back to my API governance. So I can say new profile. Here I can say OS profile. Next, here I can use API, open API best practices. Then I can say top, like I will do just this much of the selections. Now I have to select the tag, which is OS API, apply. So it will just show the book and book inventory API. Why it's not going for next? Okay, this is bug. And create. Now you have a OS profile. This takes time for refreshing. Yeah, now its book inventory comes under this. Okay. Now let me go back to my governance. I want to create a third profile for async API. Not governance first, I have to go to Exchange. Yeah, here I can add a tag async API. So that's it. And then I can go to API governance, create async profile. Next, I will just select async. Can you see async best practices? Next, select the category, which is async API, apply. I have to go previous. Next, next. Also, you can send a notification like, to API publisher or API contact or others. Like you can have multiple email ID. Next, so anything got filled, you will get an email create. So now you have a third profile that is async API. Let me refresh it. Yeah, there is a problem. The async API is not coming here. Let me check. Yeah, it's not coming here. Like I have seen that issue. I will validate like why it's not coming here. I don't think there's a problem with spec. There's something else issue basically. So it is not able to recognize yet async API. So I will check on that part. So that is how like the main like how you can filter like how you can create a multiple profile and attach your API with that particular profile, right? You can make use of the tag or you can make use of category, whatever. So I make use of the tag in this particular demonstration. Any question?
So any new API, if we publish to Exchange, it will automatically run the
Yeah,
report for
any
this, right?
new or whatever existing API, it will automatically like scan, depend on what kind of filter you have given, Sunil.
Okay.
So Jitendra, actually, this kind of checking should happen while designing itself, right?
Yeah, you can do that, no? So as I mentioned at initial stage, right? So you can do that at the designing time also. So you can go to design center. Okay, the similar check will happen at the design time also. Let's consider I open API banking.
And do we have the list of where we can find the list of validations which is doing?
Yeah, this is in the presentation, right? And like I will tell you like where you can do that. So you can go to here, click click on this. What are the rules you need to add? Like OAS, Open API best practices. I will not go authentication, security best practices. For example, add 5 dependency.
Yeah, that we've added the added that already existing packages, right? But
Yeah, you are
what is
doing
the
at a
exact
design
rule?
time, like so you can you are doing at a design time basically. So once you add the dependency, right, so it will tell like what are the errors and everything like so you can click on this, you try to publish it. Yeah, it will give all the errors and everything. See, it will
Hmm.
list down everything.
So these are presets which are available in the Exchange, MuleSoft Exchange.
Yes,
Okay.
these are rules, everything is available. And if you want to see any rules like so you can go to your governance profile, list of the rules under that particular governance, right? So you can click one of the profile, OS or something like that, or let me go to profile setting, edit, or you can click here, view details in Exchange for this particular thing, right? So you have options, you can go there, you can start looking all the profiles, rules and everything about that.
And even can we create custom rule sets?
No, as I mentioned, we cannot do that right now,
Okay.
right? So that's it all about API governance. Let me show if I receive any mail, notification for my failures and all those things. You should have it. Yeah, you should get that, like, You can see that you receive like there's a error in your asset. Those kind of emails get received, right?
So Jitendra, based on these reports, what we get from the, I mean, governance, can we restrict the deployment of APIs as well?
No, 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 no. That you cannot.
That we cannot, right? It is just
No.
for, I mean, a
Yeah.
notification, right? That this is not falling into standards.
Yeah, but you can stop from publishing basically. Like if you added the real rule set in the design center, right?
Uh-huh.
Right, it will not allow you to publish to exchange if there's a problem with if any of the rule set got failed. So I
Okay,
will go
so these rules are again, I mean, going to be done at the role level of the user who is creating the API, right?
correct. Like if you apply this rule set right to your
Mhm.
RAML, and
Mhm.
like if any other user is also using the RAML, he will see these rule sets basically.
Okay. So we can, I mean, as platform architects, we can make it mandatory that the rule sets need to be applied for each and every API that we design, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Or you simply create a like you create a governance API governance profile. Even he try to deploy that, right? It will get
Mhm.
verified.
Okay, okay.
I
I was
think that
just I was just thinking that if we could restrict the deployments based on the governance
No, right
profile.
now it's not there, but
Okay,
you can stop from publishing basically. I'm 100% sure about that. Okay.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah. So that's it about today's meetup. I think I try to share as many as information. Okay, I'll just stop sharing. If you have any question, just let me know till like so today I don't have a couch because my other fellow is not there basically, right?
So just with the API governance, right? So if we create a new design center, if you create a new API in the design center, so we have to
Add the
um,
rule sets.
add the rule sets, right, manually.
Yeah, as a dependency, you need to do that.
Okay, yeah, that's what I think he was asking about, that how we can um, enforce it instead of the developer adding it, instead of that, how to make
Yeah,
it
yeah.
compulsorily
Right
added.
now, like it's like yeah, that's a one thing basically. Right now we have this particular like you are right going forward like we can restrict the deployments and all those things. They may become,
Mm. Yeah,
but
they
right
might
now
come.
it's
Yeah,
like that.
I
yeah,
think
that's
we
the
can
starting point.
create a like a default template kind of thing, so developers can reuse
Correct,
that.
correct. Okay, let me start with the queues also. I think a lot of people have a office timing now. I'm just sharing my screen, so just let me know if you okay. Just don't ping anything right now. So just I'm just sharing my first question. Okay. You can see my screen, right? You can still see my screen, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Just okay. Just I'm just sharing the first question on the screen. So, what version of Mule runtime supported by CloudHub 2.0? Whether it's a greater than equal to 4.3, less than equal to 4.3, greater than equal to 4.0, less than equal to 4.0. You have to write, in the chat window. A, B, C, D. Okay. So, Praveen, there cannot be two answers. So your answers will be rejected. So okay. So let me do the thing. It's Ashok Kumar. I will pick the top three. It's only like how be it doesn't support 4.2 or anything, right? Melvin. It's Ashok Kumar Madhuri. Okay. Let me stop sharing. I will just stop recording also and